Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Tider Insider TV, brought to you, as always, by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. There you see our great tumblers that we enjoy every Tuesday night out here, courtesy of Don Staley and the crew, alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm Gary Harris, WVOA 23 Sports Director, and the Crimson Tide back in game week mode. That much is obvious after listening to this week's press conferences with head coach Nick Saban and the players. The Crimson Tide spent the bye week getting ready for the final month of the season, this four-game stretch run. They're looking to respond and be mentally and physically refreshed when they come back out on Saturday night. Coach Saban has a 13-5 record following a bye, including 7-4 versus LSU after the off week. There's no way to tell how a team will respond until it's game time, although the Crimson Tide players like defensive lineman Fedarian Mathis are saying all the right things.
You know, you remember for what you do in November. That's what we say around here. And so, you know, we just got to grind harder, just, you know, keep the main thing. And that's, you know, going out and being successful every day.
All right, let me bring Rodney Orr in here. Again, a bye week is no guarantee of success. At the same time, with where Alabama was out playing in 8 straight weeks, we talked about this last week, 7-1. And they're in perfect position to do everything they want to do. More in the college football playoff rankings in a little bit, but Alabama came out number 2, so they're right there. But this 4-game stretch will tell the season. I mean, you got 3 SEC games left, plus New Mexico State. You got to win them. And if you win them, then you put yourself in a position to go to the SEC championship game and play Georgia, where a win guarantees you the SEC championship in a spot. But even a loss, you still might be in the conversation. But first things first, before you worry about Georgia, you got to get there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, it starts this week with LSU, Gary. And again, this is a great rivalry. You know, someone reminded me today that it's been like 31 years ago that LSU came in here and upset Alabama when they had a 31-game unbeaten streak. Nobody really expected it. This is a really talented LSU team. And we've seen Alabama sometimes take teams maybe that they were considered the heavy favorite a little lightly, maybe didn't play as well as they should have. We saw that at College Station. You know, so you have to guard against that. Hopefully what you see in this game is an Alabama team that comes out and plays with a lot of maturity.
Yeah, Rodney, they're 8 games in now, and this was a young football team going into the season in a lot of areas. And now they've had 8 games. They've experienced a loss. They know what it takes to get yourself ready in these SEC games, regardless of the opponent. Everybody in this SEC West, let's just be honest, Georgia's a great team. I'd like to see what Georgia did if they were in the SEC West every year and Alabama was in the East. I think Alabama might have won 10 or 11 straight division titles. It's a tougher division than the East, and this team understands that, or should understand it at this point, that with LSU, Arkansas, and Auburn still ahead, nothing's a guarantee, as you said.
No, and I think they're approaching it that way, Gary. I think they've learned some valuable lessons. I think certainly earlier in the season at Gainesville, that was an eye-opener. You know, then they came back, obviously, and went on the road to Texas A&M, and that was a real eye-opener. So you would hope that this team has matured. We think we've seen that. And I thought it was an encouraging sign against Tennessee. Mm-hmm. As poorly as they played for parts of the game, that they finished real strong. So they closed that game out. So hopefully, you know, as you head into this one, Gary, you're going to focus on the opponent that you're playing and play to that standard.
With that in mind, let's get to LSU. 4-4. I get it. 2 years ago, one of the great teams in college football history, 15-0. It's been downhill ever since for Fred Orgeron and the Tigers. Terrible year last year during the COVID, and now not much better. And I know that he's saying they don't have enough players to practice and all this, but you better believe this. This is his last go-around against Alabama. I don't know if they're good enough. We'll find out to hang in the game, but they will be ready to go. They will let it all hang out on Saturday night. I don't care what's happened previously this season. They'll be ready to play, and he'll have them ready. Now, the question, like I said, Roddy, is are they good enough to hang around for 4 quarters? I don't know. I don't think they are, but I have no doubt when they run out through that tunnel, Alabama's going to get their best shot.
Well, they are. There's no question about that. I think LSU can lay it out on, you know, they can let it all hang out. And you know what, Orgeron, the one thing heading out the door he would like nothing more is to another win at Bryant-Denny Stadium. And again, you talked about the talent on this team. I mean, Terrion Davis-Price, running back, has had a big couple of games. There he is there, very impressive. They're starting to run the ball better. Max Johnson doing a really good job as their quarterback. So offensively, they've improved a little bit. Now, they are without a lot of players. I mean, when you lose a player the magnitude of their wide receiver, Kayshon Boutte, that is a big big blow to their offense. But, again, it's a team that's very capable, very talented.
Yeah, they're missing a lot of guys, and Alabama's a 28-point favorite. Think about this. Did you ever think you would see Alabama as a 28-point favorite over LSU after what the series has been over time? But that's the case. And now it's time for Coach Talk. LSU head coach Ed Orgeron has already announced that he will step down at the end of the season. It's a mutual separation. Just 2 years removed from a perfect season and national championship. Earlier this week, Coach Saban declined to speak specifically about LSU's situation, and I don't blame him, but says in general, successful teams' biggest battle, once you get to the mountaintop, is staying there and dealing with complacency that sets in.
When people have success, sometimes they get a little complacent on doing things right. I don't know enough about their situation to be commenting on their situation. I'm just talking about the circumstances that we've gone through here, with our teams. And when you have good leadership on your team and you have good maturity on your team, usually you can sort of avoid some of those pitfalls.
Coach Saban also said that he does expect outside linebacker Drew Sanders, number 20, to be practicing this week. And if everything goes well, he could potentially play against LSU. It's not a given. He's missed the past 3 games with a broken hand and was playing great when he got hurt. And he was already filling in for Chris Allen. Don't forget about that. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, the Crimson Tide scores big with recruits, both football and basketball-wise. Stay tuned to see who will be joining the rosters. And former Crimson Tide wide receiver Henry Ruggs is involved in a tragic off-the-field accident. The latest information coming up on this very sad story. Tider Insider TV will also be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets in just a little bit. The phone number is always 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You can email us at the address on your screen or tweet at us using that hashtag TITV. We'll be right back after this.
I made this decision because, based on my relationship with Coach Orgeron at LSU, we had an agreement on if he leave, I will be taking my time to Alabama, and we all, as a staff, LSU staff, we made that commitment, and that's what it was.
And welcome back to Tider Insider TV. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Well, as we said, Alabama and LSU will meet on the gridiron on Saturday night at Bryant-Denny Stadium. But Alabama already has picked up a win recently over the Bengal Tigers on the recruiting trail. You saw Aaron Anderson right there. He flipped to the Crimson Tide, announcing his decision last Friday night at his high school game. The 5'9", 185-pound wide receiver from Shaw High School in New Orleans verbally committed to LSU nearly a year ago, but a lot has changed with LSU's situation, including again, the fact that Ed Orgeron will no longer be the head coach after this season. Anderson is one of these guys, Rodney, we've seen these type before, whether it's Jalen Waddle or JoJo Earl or Christian Leary, who's waiting to make his impact on the roster. He's not a big guy, at least in terms of height, but so athletic, can burn you in the kicking game. Just get the football in his hand and he can make plays.
Extremely dynamic. There's no other way to describe him, Gary. He had a game against perennial powerhouse John Curtis this year, returned 3 kicks for touchdowns in one game, a punt, a kickoff, a free kick. Guy's an outstanding receiver, very tough. He's a guy that Alabama's had these playmakers over the last few years, kind of got spoiled with them, and he fits that mold.
And the fact that not only is it a commitment for Alabama, but I've always thought it's kind of like a double whammy. When you get a commitment and you flip him from one of your SEC West rivals, it's almost like a double win. You get him, and they don't. And we saw this with JoJo Earl. We've seen it with others.
Well, yeah, you don't have to face him. That's for
right.
Sure. When you go down to Baton Rouge or you play here in Tuscaloosa against LSU, they've got a ton of playmakers. We've seen them through the last several years. And, again, a guy like this, you don't have to face him. You've got him playing for you. And he's a guy that, Gary, I think you look at him, he's in a very demanding high school program, one that's very disciplined. I think that's another key factor to him because I think he can make that transition to the Alabama program very smoothly.
Real quickly, Rod, he's flipped once. Obviously, LSU will be trying to get a new coach in as soon as possible. I'm sure they're going to have it lined up. If that's before the December signing period, do you feel good that he'll stick with Alabama, or he might consider flipping back?
No, I really do. I mean, you never can predict recruiting, but I think, Gary, he really, deep down, wanted to come to Alabama. I think he had made that commitment to LSU, was going to stick with it. But now this opportunity has arisen with Coach O leaving, so I think he sticks.
Super talented. All right, it was also a huge day yesterday on the recruiting trail for Alabama basketball. Man, they picked up 2 of the top recruits in the country. Brandon Miller out of the Middle Tennessee area, and Noah Clowney out of South Carolina. Miller is a consensus top 15 player in the country, rated the number 3 small forward. He's a 5-star. He chose the Tide over Kansas, as well as professional options in both Europe and the NBA G League. His father, Jay Miller, played defensive back at Alabama under Nick Saban in 2013. Noah Clowney is a top 100 recruit, and Clowney is listed as a 4-star, 6'9", 205-pound power forward. He chose Alabama over Indiana and Virginia Tech, and I don't think that Jay Miller was
Daryl Miller.
Yeah, Daryl Miller, the tight end that played at Alabama under Gene Stallings, not John Miller, the former defensive back, but still family ties there, and good to get him. And now we got some news that I hate, quite frankly, to have to report on. This is a type of story that you never want to be up here talking about. Raiders wide receiver Henry Ruggs III will face a felony driving under the influence charge after a fiery vehicle crash early Tuesday that left a woman dead and Ruggs, a former Alabama football star from Montgomery, and his female passenger injured. According to police report, Ruggs was driving a Chevrolet Corvette that crashed a little before 3:40 a.m. Las Vegas time into the rear of a Toyota RAV4 on a busy thoroughfare several miles west of the Las Vegas Strip. Police said the Toyota caught fire and the driver died. The 22-year-old Ruggs showed signs of impairment. Police said in a statement that he will be charged with felony DUI resulting in death. Ruggs and his female passenger were hospitalized with unspecified injuries. An attorney for Ruggs told TMZ Sports that they are wanting everybody to reserve judgment until all the facts are gathered. The Raiders released a statement saying that they are aware of the charge against Ruggs. And Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Calvin Ridley is stepping away from football and wants to put his focus on his mental health and well-being. Before this past Sunday's game against the Panthers, Ridley announced on social media that the past few weeks have been very challenging, and he hopes to come back as the best version of himself. Ridley is in his 4th season with the Atlanta Falcons. And Tennessee Titans running back, as the bad news just keeps coming for former Bama players. Derrick Henry, who I always brag about his durability, well, he's going to have to miss some time for the first time really in his career. He had surgery on his foot after he broke it against the Indianapolis Colts. He could potentially come back maybe for a late season appearance or the playoffs, but there's no guarantee. The Titans officially put him on IR yesterday. Before the surgery, he was dominating the league in rushing with 937 yards, which is about 300 more than anybody else. Of course, he's coming off a 2,000-yard season. He already had 10 touchdowns. This is a big blow to the Titans, who are expected to sign Adrian Peterson to try to come in and fill up the void. The Crimson Tide is also mourning the death of one of its former football players. Grant Hill has passed away. Grant Hill was a wonderful teammate and friend. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and friends during this devastating time, the university wrote in a Facebook post. Hill played on the University of Alabama's offensive line from 2013 to 2014. After graduating from Huntsville High School, he was 26 years old. All right, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama soccer looks to extend its season at the SEC tournament. Stay tuned to see the highlights of the quarterfinals match. And next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. You see the information on the screen. Interact with Tider Insider TV right now. Go ahead and give us your call at 205-348-9882. We'll be back after this. Good news is Alabama earned a bye at the SEC tournament in Orange Beach in soccer. Bad news is the number 6 seed Tide lost a tough one to Ole Miss. The number 3 seed 1-0 this afternoon. In the 10th minute, Molly Martin of Ole Miss scored the header. It would wind up being the only goal of the game. Alabama's now 9-8-1, and their postseason chances took a big hit today. They've had a lot of improvement this year, but that was one that they would have loved to have gotten today. All right, welcome back into Tider Insider with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Phone calls are welcome. Phone lines are open, in fact, 205-348-9882. If you want to give us a call, we'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, let's get to an email. We've got several emails. This is from Terry in Moundville. The Bama football team is not a championship team. Major issues at quarterback and wide receiver, plus defensive coverage breakdowns. We had to shorten that up some, Rodney, but he went on to say that Bryce Young overthrows deep balls and that the defense can't get off the field. Wide receivers are dropping balls. Basically just said it's not a championship team. Terry, I'm not so sure I agree with you. I think the time will tell, but you're a little more doom and gloom about this team than me. I mean, they're 7-1. They're number 2 in the playoff rankings. They lost one game on the last play of the game at an incredibly tough environment. We'll see. And you know what? If they wind up dropping 2 or 3 games, I'll say you're right, but I'm not ready to say that yet.
Well, I think the problem is he's judging Bryce Young a little harshly, obviously. I mean, the guy's the leading Heisman candidate for a reason. I mean, he's pretty good. He's doing really well. I think he helped carry the team last game. In fact, Gary, there was a point in that game that Bryce Young was, keeping everything together for this Alabama team. And, he's thrown for, 2,500 yards, 26 touchdowns already. So he's having a really good year.
All right, and let's get to the phone lines. And our good pal BT, Bill Taylor, is with us here in Tuscaloosa. Hey, BT, how you doing, man?
Good, Gary and Ronnie. How about y'all?
Doing well.
Gary, I want to ask, you think this week off will help the football team this week?
BT, I do, and we talked about it earlier. I think, again, there's different ways to look at a bye week. Sometimes if you're playing great, the last thing you want to do is stop. And Alabama was playing well, but I think they felt like this was a perfect time to take a bye week. You're 2/3 of the way through the season. Take a break, come back and finish this final third and get ready for the postseason. So, yeah, I think the bye week, as I said earlier, Rodney, comes at a perfect time for Alabama.
Well, it did. I mean, you play 8 straight games. You need it physically, mentally, all of those things. I think they had a great opportunity to rest, to get healthier. Those are big factors, I think, as you start to head down the stretch, Gary. And also maybe get some players ready that you want to help contribute down this stretch. So, I think that certainly came at a great time.
All right. We're going to go to the break. All right, we'll come back with more TITV right after this. We'll take more phone calls. If you want to give us a ring, phone lines are wide open. 205-348-9882 is the number. 205-348-9882. Keep it dialed in. More TITV right after this. Well, just last week, Alabama wide receiver John Mechie III signed a delicious NIL deal with Taziki's Mediterranean Cafe. Now through November 30th, Taziki's Mediterranean Cafe in Tuscaloosa will be offering the Mechie Meal, which is his favorite Taziki's dish. Lamb feast. The menu item includes fresh cut lamb, a classic Greek salad, basmati rice, or new roasted potatoes. Mechie also dined with some of the customers and talked to us about partnering with a restaurant that he feels fits his diverse culture. He was born overseas, grew up in Canada. He is excited about this opportunity, as he should be. He enjoys eating there. All right, let's get back to our phone calls. Rick in Regent Park is with us. Hey, Rick, how are you?
Just fine. How about y'all, fellas?
Doing
Appreciate
okay.
you taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I got a comment about Henry Ruggs. The kid is just now 25 years old, and he has taken the life of another one, and he has to live with that the rest of his days. I hate that it happened like it did, but when you're young, you got a pocket full of money and everything, things get out of control sometime, and unfortunately, that's what happened this time. I appreciate you taking my call, fellas.
All right, Rick. He's actually just 22, but yeah, it's tragic for all involved, and prayers just go out to everybody. It's a terrible, terrible situation. All right, Ronnie, before we get to an email, I do want to ask you about the college football playoff rankings. Came out tonight. Georgia, Alabama, Michigan State, Oregon, the top 4. Ohio State 5, Cincinnati 6. Oklahoma's down at 8. Michigan's at 7. But Alabama and Georgia, it's clear. I think the committee gets it. The SEC is the toughest college football conference in the country, and I got no problems with Alabama being number 2. In fact, I think it's a good call by the committee.
No, I expected that, no worse than 3. So I think it is good. The only one that really surprised me a little bit was Oklahoma. They are undefeated, right? So, Michigan has a loss. Yeah. So a little surprising.
A lot of football left, but good to have Georgia and Alabama at the top. Michigan State 3, Oregon 4. Of course, Oregon has that win over Ohio State, at Ohio State. You can't forget about that. All right, let's get to an email, Rod. And this is from Malik in Tuscaloosa. What round will Brian Robinson be drafted in? I tell you this. I think he'll be a first 3-round draft pick. I don't think he's going to be a first rounder the way Najee was. Remember, Derrick Henry wasn't even a first-round pick, believe it or not. It's hard to go in the first round if you're running back, but I think coming back has been a great decision by him, and it's helped Alabama football. He's having a terrific year. He's improved his receiving skills. He's a hard runner, tough around the goal line. Like I said, Malik, I think he could go in the top 3 rounds, which is really, really very strong for running backs these days.
Well, you look at Brian, he's 6'1", he's close to 230 pounds. He probably runs a 4.5 or better, Gary. He's learned how to kind of make people miss. He runs with power. You mentioned he improved his receiving skills. And I think he's a guy, as you look at the stretch run here, LSU, Arkansas, Auburn, hopefully an SEC championship game playoff opportunities. He's a guy that I think could really elevate his stock even further.
All right. What are we going to do, guys? We're going to try to get to one more email or get it to the break? All right, phone call. We got a call. Line 1. Let's go to line 1. And we got Roger in Tuscaloosa. Hey, Roger, how are you?
Doing good, man. Roll Tide.
Yes, sir. What you got?
Well, I was wondering, do you think there's anything ever be done about the people laying down, faking injuries that could help delay the game? You know, we're seeing a rash of that. Some of them 2 at a time laying down. So, you know, roll Tide and tell the guy from Mountville, hey, the Tide's dominant. Roll Tide.
All right, real quickly, Roger. Yeah, I do think something is going to be addressed in the offseason because it has gotten ridiculous.
No, I agree with you too, Gary. I think there is. What exactly that'll be, we'll find out, but I do agree.
All right, we'll be back with predictions. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to TITV. It is prediction time. I'm Gary Harris. He's Rodney Orr. And Rodney leads us off, as always, Alabama and LSU this Saturday night. Bryant-Denny Stadium, what do you got?
Well, listen, you know, I've already said it. I think this Alabama team is facing a team that's very talented. LSU, they are minus some players. But the thing I'm really looking forward to seeing from Alabama is, do they come out and take care of business? Do they play with maturity? I think they've had the week off. I think this team's grown from some of the experiences that they've had through the season. With that said, I think Alabama does it, Gary. I think they play with a lot of maturity, 45-17.
Wow. You know, point spreads, these guys in Vegas, they do this for a living. They're setting a point spread to try to get an equal amount of play on both sides. Now, the fact that they've made this a 28-point line tells you what the perception is of this game. The perception is that Alabama is going to blow LSU out. And I don't think that it's going to be a blowout in the traditional sense that it's going to be over at halftime. I think LSU is going to give the best effort they've given all year. But I do think over 4 quarters, Alabama is not just better, they're substantially better than this team. And there's a reason that line is that. I think it's right on it. I got it 48-20, Alabama over LSU. And Coach O goes out with a loss. You know what? He's got that national championship. You can never take it away from him. But I remember having this conversation with you, Rodney. Even after he won the national championship, I told you I never thought he'd make it long term. One thing to have a great team. It's another thing to build a great program.
No, I think a lot of people agreed with that.
All right, that's going to do it for the show. Thanks for tuning in to TITV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. And remember, if you missed any of the program, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 or find it anytime at WVOA23.com. We're going to leave you with some Alabama football practice from earlier this afternoon. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good night.